We are about a week and a half into the 2025 fantasy baseball season, and if you're looking to drop your entire team, I've got great news for you. We've got 20 pickup recommendations coming up on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, brought to you by Vivid Seats. Hello and welcome, everybody, to the Saturday edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, brought to you by Vivid Seats. Erik Halterman here, joined as always by Ryan Boyer. And Ryan, I think people don't need this episode anymore. I saw that Yahoo put a torpedo bat indicator in their system, and that's all people need, right? You don't need to listen to any sort of waiver wire pickup podcast. Just sort by torpedo bat, add those guys, right? Baseball is easy.
Yeah, just look for that torpedo bat icon. That's an interesting decision by our friends at Yahoo. I think the jury is still out how much difference these torpedo bats actually make, but hey, it's an interesting little wrinkle early in the season for sure.
Yeah, I don't want to do the topic to death again. It's been discussed quite a bit over the first 10 days or so. But now that we actually have that indicator right in the system in some platforms, I just want to ask, is it even a tiebreaker for you? If you're deciding between two players, I could go either way. Well, this guy, apparently he's got a torpedo bat. I guess I'll go with him. Do you think, is that the correct level, or is even that too much?
I mean, I guess you could use that as a tiebreaker. How official are any of these torpedo bat listings anyway? I mean, do we know for sure who's actually using them? Because I know Ivan Herrera this week has been using Brendan Donovan's bat, so I don't know what
noted power hitter.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe if you want to use that as a tiebreaker if you don't have any other things to go on, sure, why not? But like I said, I think the jury is definitely still out.
Yeah, and the thing for me is that it seems like more and more players will be trying them out as the season goes on, right? So just because somebody doesn't have a torpedo bat indicator next to their name today doesn't really indicate that next game they won't be using one, right? It seems like they're a fad, and we're going to see, I would imagine, a whole bunch of guys try them out, and not everybody's going to stick with them. And are they still going to have a torpedo bat indicator if they ran with it for a week and decided it's not for them? So I think it's going to be interesting. I think it will have a real effect, but I don't think it'll be huge. I don't think it'll be distributed equally. I don't think that we can just say, go get the torpedo guys. But maybe, I guess, I hope I'm right and that we can't just do that, because that would be a little bit boring. But we will get to the ads soon enough. As always, we want to talk about the headlines to start today's show, beginning with Ketel Marte, who signed a unusual extension when he was already under team control for 4 more seasons, and then almost immediately got hurt. Hamstring strain, hit the IL officially this morning. Tim Tawa was recalled to take his open roster spot. It's going to be Garrett Hampson probably starting at second base. No Jordan Lawler just yet. We did not throw Garrett Hampson on today's list. Should we have?
I don't think so. And I did see that Tawa is starting today. He's somewhat interesting. Put up some big numbers in the minors a couple years ago. I think the more interesting fallout is Geraldo Perdomo moved up to the leadoff spot. He's not super exciting for fantasy category purposes because he doesn't have much power and he has a little bit of speed, but not a ton. He is a really good on-base guy, though, so he's a fit for that leadoff spot. Have not seen a grade on the hamstring strain yet for Ketel Marte. We don't know exactly how long he's going to be out just yet. I mean, if it's just for a couple weeks, Perdomo and Tawa are probably can be safely ignored in most leagues. But if it's a long-term absence and Perdomo is going to stick in that leadoff spot, I think he could have some utility there. Batting at the top of a really good lineup, he can score some runs. Like I said, good on base guy, fairly limited skill set, but could score some runs and chip in with a handful of steals. I think he could be useful in deeper formats.
Yeah, I actually really kind of like Perdomo. He's not anything special, and it looks like he doesn't quite meet our qualifications for inclusion on the deep league ads. But if he's out there in any of your deep leagues, I'd be grabbing him if he really is going to be a leadoff man. Like you said, the skills aren't exciting, but I really like a shortstop who plays every day and is at least fine in a deeper league as your middle infielder, for example. I used to have Justin Crawford for $1 on a whole bunch of deep league teams. JP Crawford. A similar idea there. Somebody who is just going to play all the time and is going to be okay. And you could usually score incredibly cheap, usually at shortstop. Geraldo Perdomo has been one of those guys for me for a couple of years now. And this is probably the peak of his value. Other infielder hamstring injury news. We've got Matt McLain. Was scratched from the lineup yesterday for the Reds with a hamstring issue, although he did appear as a pinch hitter. Did he have a homer as a pinch hitter, or he was relevant? A flyout, sorry. So he was in the game. Oh, that's what I saw. I saw a tweet saying he hit the ball to the warning track. He hit the ball very hard. He looked healthy. That's what it was, but it did not actually clear the fence. So Matt McLain, presumably, is going to be fine. I don't think we have to be worried here. I don't believe we have today's Reds lineup in as of recording, but even if he misses that one, probably not going to miss a lot of time.
Yeah, it seemed to be trending that way. Hamstring injuries are always kind of worrisome. You worry that that's going to be a result in an IL stint, but they seem pretty confident. And obviously, by his appearance as a pinch hitter, he probably would have needed a pinch runner, I'm guessing, had he reached. Maybe he can DH for a little bit like Vinny Pasquantino has been doing. I saw Vinny's finally in the lineup at first base today. I believe that's the first time. There's kind of an aside there. But, hopefully McLain can avoid the IL. He looks good early on in the season. Consider more day-to-day for now, but keep a close eye on it because those hamstring injuries can be finicky for sure.
Yeah, one to watch, certainly. Hopefully not one we'll have to be watching for long. Another injury to track here, Jack Leiter. He had a couple of quite strong starts to open the year. It would be very encouraging for anybody who's buying into the Jack Leiter buzz. A combined 10 strikeouts, 1 walk, 1 earned run on 6 hits across 10 innings of work. But he exited his second start with a blister after just 5 innings. And it was apparently a blister serious enough to send him to the injured list. Now, presumably, something like a blister is not going to keep him out for much longer than the minimum 15 days. So wherever I've grabbed Leiter, I'm trying to hold him, even though he's not a proven pitcher. I mean, there's every chance I would have sat him for a couple starts anyway, even though I like him, right? Are we safe to hold on to Jack Leiter?
Yeah, I think you have to hold on to him if you can. Blister issues always have the chance to kind of recur. Some pitchers have more issues with them, especially if they spin the ball a lot. I know Rich Hill famously had constant blister issues because he threw so many of those curveballs. But hopefully Jack Leiter doesn't fall into that bucket because it's been super encouraging of how he's looked so far, especially from a control perspective. I think he's only walked 1 batter in his first 2 starts. Super encouraging stuff there. So unless you're really super hard pressed with roster spots, I would go out of my way if I can to hang on to him for sure.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. How about some positive injury news? There's a couple of positive updates for Atlanta, one being that Spencer Strider was excellent in his second rehab start. 5 1/3 scoreless no-hit innings for AAA Gwinnett yesterday. Walked 2, struck out 8, built up to 74 pitches. It looks like he's going to make a couple more rehab outings, would put him on track to return April 19th. So the people who are positive about Spencer Strider look accurate so far, at least. But that's not the only positive update for Atlanta. There's one that's going to affect them even sooner. Sean Murphy is nearing activation, is expected to be activated from the IL by the end of this weekend series. So we have not yet seen that happen, but it could happen tomorrow, if not later today. So excellent news there, Sean Murphy. Somebody you would go pick up in a one-catcher league if he was undrafted to start the year, or what? Or no?
Yeah, Murphy did the catching for that Strider rehab start, and
True.
looks like it's going to be his last rehab game. Hopefully, we'll see him today or tomorrow. One catcher leagues he's kind of borderline there probably. I think he definitely needs to be picked back up in two catcher formats though. Drake Baldwin the batted ball metrics have been pretty good with him so far, but he's not had the results. I assume he's going to be sent back down, and Murphy's going to take back over as the primary catcher in Atlanta. It's been, I think it's fair to say, mostly frustrating tenure with the Braves for Murphy, aside from that just monster first half with that first season. But still quite a bit of talent there, and theoretically should be in a good lineup. I know the lineup hasn't gotten off to a great start so far, but he just definitely should be rostered in two catcher formats if he's still hanging out there in your waiver wire.
All right, so go grab Sean Murphy. One more headline to talk about before we move on to the priority ads today. That's Chase Dollander, a top pitching prospect in all of baseball, is going to make his debut on Sunday. But, of course, that debut is going to come for the Rockies. Now, just to get an idea of just how good Chase Dollander is, if you look at some non-fantasy rankings, so ones that won't penalize him for having an inflated ERA, and we'll just look at, his skills and his park adjusted stats. Over at Fangraphs, Chase Dollander is the 14th ranked pitcher, or 14th ranked prospect, period. Looks like he is the fourth starting pitching prospect over there. Roki Sasaki, Andrew Painter, Jackson Jobe, and then Chase Dollander. Now, take a look at James Anderson's fantasy-focused prospects, which are going to penalize Dollander for having a high ERA, because the goal is to figure out who's going to help your fantasy team, not who's going to have the highest WAR. Well, Chase Dollander's not even in the top 100. He's 119, a full 105 spots lower. So my question is, should we have put Chase Dollander on the rundown as a recommended pickup, or do you want no part of a player who, a rookie who's made no major league starts, and you're probably only going to use him in his away games? Is that even appealing to you at all?
Yeah, number 8 overall in Baseball America's rankings, and
wow, even higher there. Wow.
Number 6 on James Anderson's Rockies rankings, just Rockies specific. So that gives you an idea of the disparity there. I think he's worth picking up just to see if he can kind of buck the trend. And I mean, scouts say, the scouting reports on him say that he has the kind of fastball that he could just go fastball heavy, and theoretically it shouldn't have a huge effect at Coors. But he's just got a lot of stuff working against him, obviously. In addition to Coors, he's on a terrible team as well. He's in a division with a lot of good offenses. So even when he's pitching on the road, he's going to be facing some really good lineups. That said, he's obviously super talented. I would like to roster him and just stick him on my bench if I could, and see how those first few starts go. Coors, at least early on in the season, is not as Coursy as it is later on in the season. So maybe he can squeeze in some positive starts early on. I know they had some snow there yesterday. I don't know if Chase Dollander's used to that kind of weather, but yeah, I would like to roster him and just kind of see where it goes, but I would not want to throw him in my lineup right away for sure.
Yeah, just taking a look at his first 3 projected starts. The way we have it right now is supposed to be home against the Athletics on Sunday, which I don't know. If you have the opportunity to pick him up ahead of his debut, are you going to use him in his major league debut in Coors Field? But it is a cold day against the A's. No,
probably
no
not.
Interest. His next start at the Padres, so a better pitcher's park, but Padres have a good lineup.
We'll see how things go Sunday. If he surprises me Sunday, maybe.
Right. But, and then after that, he'd be tracking towards a home start against the Nationals. It's not a great lineup, but it's Coors Field. So I don't know. And then
Yeah.
after that, maybe if he's still around, the Rockies could be healthier by then and might send him back down. It would be probably at the Royals. So
Yeah.
maybe that one.
With the information we have right now, it doesn't seem like you'd be throwing him into your lineup right away, but we got to see him pitch first. So he could, if he goes out and throws 7 shutout innings Sunday, I'd
Right.
probably be more interested in putting him in my starting lineup.
Yeah, again, a huge prospect from a non-fantasy perspective. So we do have to mention him, but just wanted to go through it start by start just to envision, all right, do you actually think you're going to use him? And look, you got to do that because if you're not going to use him, doesn't matter how good he is, don't pick him up. Let's head on over to today's priority ads. We're going to go 5 pitchers and 5 hitters in general here. The priority ads are players who are interesting in every single format if they're still out there. These are also the players who are more likely to only be available in some of your shallower mixed leagues, like a 10 or 12 team Yahoo, ESPN, CBS league. Later in the season, when we get more call-ups, we'll probably get some more guys who are universally interesting. But I think this week it's mostly going to be shallow league players in this section. Who is your top pitcher ad in those formats?
I've got Jordan Hicks. I don't know about you. I was kind of a little flummoxed as to why the Giants wouldn't just go ahead and throw both Landon Raup and Hayden Birdsong in their rotation and just put Jordan Hicks in their bullpen. Yeah. Before the season, I would have suspected that would eventually happen, and maybe it still does. But gosh, Jordan Hicks looked really good in his first start. 6 shutout innings, just 1 hit allowed. 6-2 strikeout to walk rate at Houston. Average 98 miles per hour with a sinker. That's up more than 3 miles per hour from last year. The pitch usage was different. He threw like 2/3 sinkers. Basically scrapped his splitter. And obviously that formula worked wonders for him. I know he purposefully, in his move into the rotation last year, was kind of letting off the gas a little bit with the velocity. He's trying to preserve things, but maybe he's just decided I'm going to throw as hard as I can now and let it eat and see what happens. And that it certainly worked his first start. He has the Mariners on Sunday at home. I would want to put him in my lineup for that start. Unfortunately, during the fab period that we're discussing here, he's then going to have at the Yankees and at the Phillies after that, lined up for his next 2 following starts. Those are not great matchups at all. So if Jordan Hicks has another great start Sunday, I'd still be a little hesitant to use him in those matchups. But he obviously has a massive arm, and if he's figured out the pitch mix, if he can stay healthy and throw enough strikes, there are definitely some ifs there. But if you're looking to roll the dice on some upside, he's certainly got that for the Giants.
Yeah, I would doubt that Hicks is still on your roster in August or September. I would imagine that he will move back to the bullpen by the end of the season. He got his innings from 65 and 2/3 to 109 and 2/3, which means he's not going to get all the way to, 160, 180 this year. But, maybe he'll start for one more month than he did last year, or maybe he'll bounce between the rotation and the pen all year. But he's good enough to be in your lineup now, at least against worse opponents, I guess, than the ones he'll have next week. I definitely would like Jordan Hicks on my team. I would also like Max Meyer on my team. Max Meyer is somebody who, wasn't he probably our most mentioned player last year, because it kept looking like he was about to come back, and then when he did come back, it kept looking like he was about to turn the corner, and it was not a good season for Max Meyer last year. 5.68 ERA, 142 WHIP in 11 starts. Spent much of the year in the minors where he wasn't necessarily better. But you got to remember, this is the first year back from Tommy John surgery for a pitching prospect who was supposed to be quite good before that surgery. I am willing to give a guy like that a pass for one bad year. If he was bad again this year, I would say, well, it looks like surgery, the injuries have just, taken a toll on his arm, and he's not the same guy we thought he was. But so far through 2 starts, he's striking out 29% of opposing batters, walking just 6%. got a 50% ground ball rate as well. That ground ball rate was just about the only good thing in his line last season. Toss in a great home park to pitch in Miami as well. Probably almost the worst possible shot at wins, unfortunately. But Max Meyer, even yesterday against Atlanta, in Atlanta, what could have been quite a tough start, he did give up 3 runs on 8 hits in 6 innings, but that's still a quality start, and he struck out 8 and walked 2, giving him 15 strikeouts against 3 walks in his first 2 starts. For somebody who really struggled to miss enough bats last year, I am really encouraged by his bat missing ability this year, and I think it's real. He's changed his repertoire. He's added a sweeper, and he's tweaked his slider, which now averages 91. I don't know why that's a slider. He also was using it, I think, as his most used pitch. I mean, if you've got a pitch that moves like a cutter and is at cutter velocity and you use it like a cutter, that's a cutter, not a slider, but whatever. I'm not going to tell him otherwise. The pitch works. The new repertoire seems like it really works. So I would be all in on, well, not all in, but I'm in on Max Meyer. We should give some bids here. We forgot with Jordan Hicks, but I think I'd be going at least in the 7 to 9, 8 to 10 range for Max Meyer. I think he's good, and I think he's going to help your team maybe all year.
Yeah, and that slider, 47.4% whiff rate, slider, cutter, whatever you want to call it, and 231 expected WOBA. So very good results with that pitch so far. And circling back on Jordan Hicks, I wouldn't go crazy with the bid on him. I think I'd actually go lower than what you went for Meyer, maybe something like 4 or so for Jordan Hicks. I would go a little higher, I think, for my next guy. I'm going to move over to the relief pitcher side with Tommy Kahnle. Has the only traditional save for the Tigers so far. He's logged 2 scoreless appearances with his new team. Bo Brisky, who is a guy who I think last week I said I would probably stick at the top of a very muddled committee. But in that game that Kahnle recorded the save, Bo Brisky pitched in the 6th inning in that game. Kahnle has had health issues over the years, but when he's been healthy, he's been really good. If you look at since 2022, 2.39 ERA, 27.7% strikeout rate, walk rate a little high at 10.3%, but nothing that can't be manageable with that strikeout rate. Doesn't have any splits. Tommy Kahnle, he's obviously known for that changeup. What he throw like 40-something changeups in a row during the playoffs last year, something crazy like that. So don't have to worry about the splits with him. I really don't trust what AJ Hinch is going to do in that bullpen. But Kahnle looks, I think, probably at the top of the pecking order right now. You probably have to go double digits, I think, or at least close to it to get him. Don't know if I would quite go that far. It kind of depends on your saves / closers situation to see how badly you actually need to roster a guy like that. But I mean, at least upper single digits, maybe 8 or 9, maybe stretch it to 10 with Tommy Kahnle.
Yeah, I think if he really is going to be at the top of this committee, I think you either are going to bid 8 to 10 on Tommy Kahnle, or you're just going to say, I don't bid on Tigers relievers. I'm going to target other bullpens. But I think if you're willing to take some shots in this Detroit bullpen, Kahnle looks like a pretty reasonable shot to take at this point. For people who like logic and order, sorry, but I'm going back to the rotation here. Ryan's got all the relievers today for whatever reason. But my next guy here is Jose Soriano of the Angels. Now, I threw him on before he gave up 5 runs in 5 1/3 innings to the Guardians last night, but I'm comfortable leaving him on there because also in that game, he struck out 9 batters, actually a career high. And generally, when I'm looking at pitchers' game logs early in the season, I only count it as a bad start if the ERA and the strikeout to walk ratio were both bad. If you give me a guy who gave up some runs, maybe gave up a couple homers, but also struck out 9, I'm not worried yet. And so that means now through 2 starts for Soriano, because his first outing saw him give up no runs in 7 innings against the White Sox. He now has a 3.65 ERA, 0.97 whip. Crucially, though, a 30% strikeout rate for Jose Soriano. 11% walk rate isn't good, but Soriano last year Very interesting profile. One of those guys who throws incredibly hard, 99 mile per hour average velocity last season, but he doesn't miss bats. He instead gets grounders, sort of like Jordan Hicks did when he was a closer. A lot of these guys who have turbo sinkers, I guess you'd say, they don't actually miss the bats you'd expect with the velocity, but they get really high ground ball rates. That was the case for Soriano last year. A 60% ground ball rate keeps the ball in the yard. He gave up a pair of homers last year, but the ground ball rate is still excellent this year. And if there's any signs that he's going to turn that velocity into more strikeouts this year, I'm pretty interested to see where Jose Soriano could go. I'm also quite worried that a pitcher who throws this hard in is a starter. His arm's going to fall off. But until it does, I think Jose Soriano should actually keep the ball in the yard, should give you pretty respectable ratios. It was a 3.42 ERA last year, and maybe he'll get you strikeouts as well. So I want Soriano now, just in case this is year the strikeouts come. I think after that somewhat poor outing his last time, you might not have to bid that much, maybe only like 3 to 4% in some of those shallower leagues. But I think this could be the year for Jose Soriano.
Yeah, he seems like a guy that with just maybe a little pitch mix tweak could start missing more bats, because he does miss bats with his secondary pitches. I mean, you look at last year, his curveball had a whiff rate of over 40%. Slider, he didn't use much, but it was at 46%. He actually has used that a lot more so far this year, and his whiff rate on his slider is at 67% so far. His splitter at 60%. So it's not as if he can't miss bats with his secondary pitches. He just throws a lot of sinkers, which, I mean, you don't really blame him. It's a really good sinker. He gets a lot of ground balls. He's got great velocity with the pitch, but I mean, would he be better off going to the secondary pitches more and missing more bats? I think for fantasy purposes, maybe we would prefer that, but maybe if he could just find that sweet spot between inducing the grounders and missing the bats, that will lead to a breakout season for Soriano. Going back to relievers, Dennis Santana, he picked up the first post David Bednar save. David Bednar, I think it's fair to say surprising demotion to AAA. I mean, they had to do something there. I don't think anybody was expecting him to be sent down to the minors. I think I was even more surprised he actually had options left where he could be sent to the minors, but that's where he wound up. And Dennis Santana got that first save chance and converted it while wearing shorts, it seemed. I don't know if you guys saw the pictures of that, but his baseball pants were about mid-thigh. Don't know if MLB is going to crack down on that, but we as fantasy managers just want those saves, and he picked one up. Halterman pitched the 8th inning ahead of him. He was also thought to be in the mix for potential saves, but Dennis Santana's pitched a lot better than Halterman so far this season. So far with the Pirates, 2.45 ERA, 28.5% strikeout rate, just a 7.5% walk rate for Dennis Santana. They got a couple lefties in that bullpen that could also potentially be in the mix. Caleb Ferguson, Ryan Borucki. I think both of those guys have not allowed a run so far. If Derek Shelton wants to go full on committee, they could be in the mix as well. But Dennis Santana certainly looks like the closer right now. But his pre-Pittsburgh track record, not good. Maybe he's just figured something out. He was formerly a prospect of some note, so he's not like a nobody. That was a long time ago, though. Former failed starter, Dennis Santana, but saves are saves. He looks like the best option in the Pirates bullpen right now. I think I would actually bid a little more for him than I would for Tommy Kahnle. It just looks a little more clear, the roles there. I think if you want to land Dennis Santana, you're probably going to have to go to like 12, 13 with your bid.
Yeah, I think that Santana, since he's the guy, I mean, seems pretty clear. Could be Bednar again, if he gets himself right in 2 weeks. That's the risk with Santana. It certainly doesn't look like Bednar is 2 weeks away from getting right, but Santana doesn't really have the look of closer of the future about him. He looks like he'd be a setup man on 28 teams out there, but he's closing for the Pirates, and if he's got the job, I would put him behind Luke Jackson, who's still actually out there in more than half of Yahoo leagues and is definitely the closer in Texas and could be the closer for 6 months. I would take Jackson first, but I'd take Santana after that ahead of Tommy Kahnle as well. Let's move over to the priority ads on the hitter side right after this message from Vivid Seats. Finally, baseball is back. This MLB season, knock it out of the park with Vivid Seats and score great tickets to the biggest games of the year. Every fastball, every home run, and every eye-popping play of your favorite team, live and in person. Plus, with Vivid Seats rewards, you can earn rewards with every single purchase. Just buy 10 tickets, then cash in your credit toward your free 11th ticket. Talk about an easy win. And here's a pro reward tip. When buying tickets for your whole group, split the bill and make progress towards your free 11th ticket even faster. From behind the dugout to the upper deck, Vivid Seats has great tickets for all the 2025 games that matter to you. Just visit vividseats.com or download the app today. Vivid Seats. Experience it live. See vividseats.com/rewards for terms and conditions. Just used Vivid Seats yesterday to buy some tickets for Sunday's game at Wrigley Field. Going to go watch Ben Brown's first home start of the year. Pretty excited for that one. But let's get to some of the priority ads. Starting with, or the priority ads on the hitter side, I should say, starting with Jordan Walker, who I think it's too early to give up on. And while he was maybe given up on a bunch of shallower leagues, it looks like he's still out there in, what is it, like 85% of Yahoo leagues? I think that should be changing. Jordan Walker was mostly interesting for his playing time in deeper leagues because, the performance really hasn't been there, but we can't give up on a guy who doesn't turn 23 until May, who was as highly rated of a prospect as he was. And he's showing some signs this year. The most encouraging thing is that the strikeouts are down, a 19% strikeout rate through 6 games. Now, in Walker's rookie season, he had about a league average strikeout rate, 22%, but that shot up to 28% last year. And it didn't look like it was going to work at that level for him. If the plate discipline's coming around, the hard hit numbers, nothing too special yet, although he does have a homer. Weirdly, he's also attempted 4 steals, only been successful on 2 of those. I don't know too much to make about that. Is Jordan Walker suddenly a speed demon? Are the Cardinals going to be one of those teams that's running like crazy? I don't know what to do with that, but mostly I just see a player who is off to a good start, who was supposed to be good, and who's still quite young. Grab him now just in case that the hot start turns into the breakout season. I mean, it's way too early to say that that's what's happening, but this is what the first 6 games of a breakout season would look like, right?
Yeah, he's actually surprisingly fast for such a big guy. He's 67th percentile on sprint speed, so he's not a complete zero there. Don't know that you can count on him attempting that many stolen bases regularly, but you're going to be buying into him for his bat. Still only 22 years old. As you mentioned, the plate discipline looks much better so far this season. Also got a double-digit walk rate. The average exit velocity so far, 93.2 miles per hour. Only a 5.9% barrel rate. It's hard to be hitting the ball that hard consistently, but have that few number of barrels. But those numbers can be a little wonky early on in the season, so we can't read a ton into it. But yeah, encouraging stuff so far for Jordan Walker, and I'm with you. He should be certainly rostered more often.
Might not use a huge bid either, right? Given how many shallow leagues he's still out there in. I mean, I'm seeing some of the comments. People don't like this one. So if that means your league mates aren't going to like this one either, I don't think you're going to have to actually bid that much for Jordan Walker this week. I think you can get him for 2 to 4 this week. And if he has, another good week or two, I think he's going to shoot up into that 10% plus range. That's why I'm saying go get him now.
And I'm saying go get Hunter Goodman now as well.
Yeah.
Go back to mid-February, and Bud Black said Jacob Stallings was going to see the bulk of the starts at catcher for the Rockies. And I mean, if we know now if we knew then what we know now about how the playing time was going to break down with Rockies catchers, Hunter Goodman would have been going a lot higher in drafts during March. Always kind of an intriguing guy anyway, and he's started all 7 games so far for the Rockies. 4 at catcher, 3 at designated hitter. He's batted cleanup each of the last 5 games, including 4 times against a righty. Had an awesome spring training. He's off to a great start, 960 OPS, a couple home runs already. Great quality of contact. Keep in mind also that the Rockies have played all their games except for 1 on the road so far, so that's even more encouraging that he's off to a great start. Looking back at the minor league track record, 230-plus home run seasons on his resume. Does have bad plate discipline. I don't think he's going to be an asset for average, although Coors, is, as we know, is a big boost in that regard. But yeah, it's Hunter Goodman is, like I said, would have been going a lot higher in leagues if we knew he was going to be an everyday player and batting in the middle of the lineup. And we know that now, so he should be rostered, I think, pretty much universally. The play discipline, as I mentioned, not great, but real power for a catcher. He's got catcher eligibility. They're committed to using him there now moving forward. So Hunter Goodman should be picked up now if he's still dangling out there in your leagues. I think it'll probably take a pretty healthy bid. Don't know if you have to go to double digits. It kind of just depends on, is it a 1 or catcher or 2 catcher league? How many guys in your league are actually actively looking for catchers? Maybe do a little research in that before determining what your bid should be, whether you think you're going to have any competition for him. But I think you probably at least have to go 8 or 9 if you want to land Hunter Goodman.
Yeah, I'd say yes if you have competition. There's a real chance that you just don't in a shallower 1-catcher league. But I do think that even in those leagues, the people who drafted the worst catchers, if I was in one of those leagues, I would draft my catcher in the very last round, thinking that the 12th best catcher is really just not really any better than the 13th and 14th best. I would drop that guy probably for Goodman, or the other guy who still just barely qualifies for our list today, Ivan Herrera, is moving over that 50% threshold, but he's at 49% today, so we can still talk about him. Ivan Herrera, somebody I really loved in draft season in those deeper leagues because I figured he can really hit. And even though he's not a great defender, the other Cardinals catcher, Pedro Pajes, he's not actually a great defender either. He's just better than Herrera, and Pajes hits like a backup catcher, whereas Herrera hits like a good starting catcher. And so far, that's been the case. Herrera had a 3-homer day Wednesday, and homered again the next game as well. Ivan Herrera started 5 of the first 7 games, I believe, and then he's sitting today. So not yet moving into a huge share of the workload behind the plate. Pajes is still in the picture, but Ivan Herrera can really hit. He can make contact and he can hit for power. I think he's somebody who belongs in all these 1-catcher formats. And so my question to you, Ryan, is Herrera or Goodman? Who are you taking first?
Oh, I'm taking Herrera. Even in 1-catcher leagues, I'm kind of surprised that the rostership rate is still pretty low. But yeah, if you were someone who waited on your catchers in a 2-catcher league, like I often do as well, and you wound up with Herrera and Goodman as your 2 guys, that's pretty fortuitous so far. The throwing in particular, the rest of his defense is fine. It's really just the throwing, and that hasn't improved. It's definitely an issue. I know they have him trying to throw from his knees now, just to at least help quicken the release. He gave a couple stolen bases yesterday too, although those weren't really his fault. They were pretty much all stolen off the pitcher. So you're probably going to deal with him being removed late, even in games he starts. Maybe he's going to miss out on a bat here or there. But I mean, if you extrapolate out his plate appearances so far, he has been removed late in games, and he's still on pace for 500 plus plate appearances. I think that's plenty for him to be an impact fantasy catcher at that rate. So go ahead and roster Ivan Herrera if he's still out there, because he's definitely a legitimately good hitter. I'm not as confident this guy's a legitimately good hitter, but he's awfully intriguing. It's Heston Kjerstad of the Orioles. Colton Cowser, unfortunately, going to be sidelined the next 6 to 8 weeks with a fractured thumb. Heston Kjerstad has started 4 of 5 games since Cowser went down, including one against a lefty for the left-handed hitter. Has been solid at the major league level so far, 749 OPS, 6 home runs, and 161 plate appearances. Look at his AAA track record, 924 OPS, 26 home runs, and basically the equivalent of a full season, a little less than a full season, really. Lots of strikeouts for Heston Kjerstad. Don't know that he's going to hit for average. I don't know how much he's ultimately going to play against lefties, probably not that much. But great quality of contact. He's a fly ball hitter. He's in pretty decent park for a left-handed batter, in a good lineup. Looks like he's going to get some regular run for a while now. I noticed he did have a really bad misread on a ball in the outfield yesterday, which probably doesn't spell too well for him, but he's back in the lineup today. So Brandon Hyde not holding it against him too much, at least not yet. But the power of Heston Kjerstad is definitely legitimate, even if there's not a whole lot else to go with it. But if you're looking for an outfielder with legitimate upside on the waiver wire, I think he's worth a shot. And I think it's probably going to take a pretty healthy bid. Don't know that I would go to double digits, but something in the 6, 7, 8 range for Kjerstad is probably about right.
Yeah, that seems right to me. Kjerstad would probably have had a lot more than his 161 plate appearances of MLB experience to his name by now if he played in any other organization. There's just such a crowd in the Orioles, and even in his sporadic playing time, he's got a pretty solid 114 WRC plus. So if he can actually hit the ground running with a run of extended starts here, this could finally be the time that we see Kjerstad be the player he's supposed to be. Which would be a very different player from my final priority hitter here, Jacob Wilson. Ryan, do you like balls in play? Do you tend to enjoy contact?
Of course.
Well, you will love Jacob Wilson. So far this season, do you know what Jacob Wilson has not done? He has not struck out. You know what else he has not done? He has not walked. Every single plate appearance is a ball in play. Well, not technically. I guess he's actually hit 2 homers, which don't count as in play by some definitions. And that's really a surprise because Jacob Wilson is a player of extremes, but one of those extremes is that he has no power. At least that's what I thought was the case. This is a guy who was drafted 6th overall in the 2023 draft. And in the minors that year, in 26 games, he hit 333. In the minors last year, in 53 games, he hit 433 with a 6.6% strikeout rate. Then he got called up, had a 28-game cup of coffee, and he only struck out 9.7% of the time. Now, he only hit 250, and there is a real worry there. He hits the ball so weakly that even if he hits it all the time, maybe the batting average isn't going to be that high. But maybe that was just a tiny sample because this year he's hitting 379. Expected batting average of 375. So it doesn't look like he's getting lucky. He's just putting the ball in play all the time and hitting it a little bit harder. Last year, he did not have a single barrel. So to see him already have 2 homers, I believe it's 2 barrels as well for him. Yep. So that's encouraging. A 38% hard hit rate as well. It's only 8 games, but to see him have a very normal mark there after coming in at 19% in his brief cup of coffee last year. If Wilson just hits the ball, with a normal level of weak contact rather than an outlier level of weak contact, he could be a really good player because he does have an outlier level of bat to ball skills. I mean, Luis Arias even level. We're talking about somebody who could run consistently single-digit strikeout rates. Even if he doesn't do a lot else, that's going to be really useful in some leagues. Now, here's the other caveat. As a player of extremes, if you are in a roto league and you're doing well in batting average, do not look for Jacob Wilson because you don't need what he gives you, and he's not going to give you much power. If you're in a roto league and you need batting average, bid a lot on Jacob Wilson because he's going to be a big help for what you need. And if you're in a points league, well, if your league penalizes you for strikeouts, Jacob Wilson's great. If it doesn't, I don't know. He's not really going to give you much power. So somebody who's very format dependent, but there's going to be some teams in some formats where Jacob Wilson could be a huge help this year. So the bid recommendation could be all over the place. I'll throw out maybe 5 to 7 because that big batting average is going to turn some heads. But Jacob Wilson, you either really want him or you don't need him at all.
Yeah, and he did, I know, add muscle over the offseason. He hit 4 home runs during spring training as well.
Yeah.
So maybe he actually does have a little pop. And it looks like that the ballpark in Sacramento is going to, at least the early returns are, it's going to play pretty hitter friendly. So maybe he can sneak into the double digits in home runs. And if you pair that with what should be a really good batting average, I know Angelo commented here that no walks isn't a plus. I thought generally that's true, but a guy that has a really good average and doesn't walk a lot, you're going to see the benefits of that average even more with fewer walks. So keep that in mind, at least for fantasy terms with Jacob Wilson. As you mentioned, very format dependent, very what your needs are dependent, but Jacob Wilson could be useful.
All right, we'll move on to the deep league players here. And I just want to mention, I think I like my deep league players less this week than normal. And I think that's not a coincidence. I think the first couple fab periods of the season, all these players who, wait a second, he won a job, they're still out there. But those guys are mostly claimed by now. And all these players who are starting out hot, well, it's just like 6 to 8 games. So it's a little bit less exciting to jump in on some of these guys who've done something over a tiny, tiny sample. Give it another week or two, suddenly we'll have some more meaningful stats. You know, we can actually say, hey, this strikeout rate is actually meaningful, not just interesting after 6 games. I think in a week or two, I will like my deep league buys more, but we still got a handful for you, and maybe you like your guys. Who is your first deep league pitcher here?
Got Matthew Liberatore for my first deep league pitcher. Surprisingly, was awarded with a rotation spot coming out of spring training for the Cardinals and logged a quality start his first time out against the Angels. 6 innings, 3 runs, 4-0 strikeout to walk rate. The velo tapered off as he went along in that start, but it wasn't bad overall when compared to last year, especially considering that he spent most of his time as a reliever. Next up, he has at Pittsburgh and versus Philadelphia. One pretty good matchup, one not great matchup. I still ultimately think that Liberatore is probably going to wind up being a better fit in the bullpen. But he's still just 25. The Cardinals are going to give him some runway to see what he can do with a starter. Oliver Marmol has said this isn't a case where he's going to get 3 starts and see what you can do. I suspect he's going to be in the rotation for at minimum at least a couple months to see how that works out. And like I mentioned, still only 25, plenty talented. I think he's got to figure out the right pitch mix. His fastball, while he throws fairly hard for a lefty starter, he can get up at 96 miles per hour. It's very hittable, his fastball. So I think he should probably scale back the usage of that pitch. If he can find the right pitch mix, he's in a very favorable home park. Don't know that I would throw him out there next week with the Phillies as one of his starts, but in your deeper formats, I think he's worth at least putting on your bench to see where this goes.
Yeah, I guess we'll take a look at Matthew Liberatore for at least one more year or one more month with your endorsement there. My top deep league pitcher here is going to be Kyle Hart of the San Diego Padres, somebody who was pitching in Korea last year and pitched excellently. 26 starts, a 2.69 ERA, a 1.03 whip, 29% strikeout rate, 6% walk rate. And, you know, we've seen some guys come back from Korea and have a couple pretty decent seasons on the other side. You know, Merrill Kelly, most recently Eric Fedde was pretty good. And I think it's fair to have an Eric Fedde level interest in Kyle Hart, which means certainly rosterable in deeper leagues and usable in most of his starts. Kyle Hart, in his first outing of the year against Cleveland on Monday, allowed 2 runs on 5 hits and 1 walk, struck out 4 batters in 5 innings. Probably a pretty typical performance from him. I doubt we're going to get big strikeout numbers, even if he was able to strike out more batters in the KBO. But you get somebody who looks like they're pretty competent and who gets a good park in San Diego and who gets a couple good starts coming up. If you can add him before his start tomorrow at a cold Wrigley Field, I think that's a usable start. And then after that, next week, he's going to get a home start against the Rockies. Love a home start against the Rockies. So Kyle Hart, I think, as a rotation filler piece, both for the Padres and for your fantasy team, I think there's enough there that he's worth a look. I wouldn't go too crazy for him because if you miss out on him, I don't think you're missing out on anything big. But I think he's a usable, again, Eric Fetty level pitcher there, Kyle Hart.
Anthony Bender, going to be my next recommendation. He notched the first Marlins save of the season. Lefty Anthony Veneziano started the 9th inning against the Mets with a couple lefties due up, but got into a bit of a jam. Bender came in, got the last couple outs to notch the save. Calvin Fauché, who's kind of thought to be at the top of that potential committee, he came in before Bender in the last game that both of those guys appeared as well. Bender's also been much better than Fauché this season. He's also got some past closing experience. It's not a ton of closing experience, but there's not a bunch of closing experience in that Marlins bullpen in general, so that could be a notch in Bender's favor. I'm not going to go crazy with the bidding for him, but Anthony Bender looks like he could potentially be at the top of the heap there, and in your deeper formats, worth a look as for a modest bid.
Yeah, got to chase those saves wherever they exist, and if you can get some of the Marlins saves, you got to do it, I guess. That's how the closer waiver wire game goes. My next suggestion here is Thomas Harrington, who could well get sent down before the waivers happen, so keep an eye on that one. But Thomas Harrington was called up for his major league debut and was not sent down immediately after it, so I think he's still going to be there. That debut did not go particularly well against the Rays on Tuesday. He allowed 6 runs on 7 hits and 4 walks, struck out just 2 in 4 innings. So while I'm interested in adding him, I wouldn't necessarily just throw him out there right away for his next start. But there's multiple reasons to like Thomas Harrington. He's just 23 years old. He is the number 56 prospect on James Anderson's top 400 here. So this is not the most exciting Pirates pitching prospect. Not the most exciting one we've seen in the last couple of years. That would obviously be Paul Skeens, but we've got Bubba Chandler set to come up later this year. But Harrington, a legitimate prospect, mostly control first, which is unusual for a prospect. But last year, he walked just 4% of opposing batters. His 25% strikeout rate wasn't particularly impressive, but was above average at least. So I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt to a prospect who was supposed to be pretty good and who had just one bad outing. If the Pirates do indeed keep Thomas Harrington in the rotation, then he'll get to make half of his starts at a very pitcher-friendly park in Pittsburgh. So I'm willing to give him a pass, and I think I could get him for quite cheap because that first outing was very poor. Again, probably not going to use him if he does get another start next week, but add him for as cheap as you can. And if he sticks around longer than that, I mean, there's certainly spots available at the back of this rotation. He could keep a spot over Bailey Falter. He could keep a spot over Carmen Majinski. So he could even keep a spot over Andrew Heaney when more of the prospects come up. So I think that Thomas Harrington, give him at least a pass for one more start. Try to add him for $1. Are you in?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the 4 walks in his first start. I mean, that just points to a guy who probably the nerves just got the best of him. I mean, a guy that's known for just impeccable control in the minors just kind of points to a guy who's maybe a little overwhelmed by the moment and should settle in eventually. And as you mentioned, because he wasn't sent back down right away, you've got to think he's going to get at least one more start. I'm going to go with Mason Montgomery with my next recommendation. This is kind of a preemptive strike, I guess. Doesn't have a ton of standalone fantasy value right now. He's maybe like the 7th inning guy with the Rays, but he just looks really, really good. Four-seamer is up more than 2 miles per hour this season. He's averaging just under 100 miles per hour with that pitch. Also has elite IVB, induced in vertical break, and great extension, which means when you combine those things with the velocity that he has, it's borderline one of the best pitches in baseball right now. Got a great slider as well. Look at the major league track record with Mason Montgomery, over 11 and 2/3 innings, 1.54 ERA, 21-5 strikeout to walk rate. He was mostly a starter in the minors before they moved him to the bullpen last year, and it was control that really held him back as a starter, but that's been less of an issue as a reliever. The stuff just looks really, really good for Mason Montgomery. Pete Fairbanks, we know, has a lengthy injury history. I don't know that Mason Montgomery is next in line. I still like Edwin Uceda as well, but I think Montgomery can provide really good ratios right now with the potential for saves down the line. So I think it's a good time to get him now before there's more buzz with him.
Yeah, if you can afford to target a reliever who is not the closer right now, not every team can afford to do that, but certainly if you can, a lot of potential for Mason Montgomery. Let's move to the deep league hitters to end today's show. And my first one here, like I said, I'm not that excited about my deep league buys this week, and that certainly applies to Zach McKinstry, who is a serviceable roster filler for both the Tigers and for you. The main reason I like him for fantasy purposes is his awesome positional eligibility. Third base / shortstop / outfield. Anytime you get triple eligibility that covers both the middle and the corner and the outfield, I mean, this is incredible. You're never going to not have a full starting lineup if you've got Zach McKinstry in there. You'll be able to make it work, and you'll be able to pick up the best available player on waivers and slide McKinstry over and make it work. The problem is McKinstry's nothing special, really, if that even. For his career, he's got a 645 OPS. He makes a respectable amount of contact, just doesn't hit the ball hard enough. He can steal you some bases, though. Stole 16 bases in 325 plate appearances last year, so that's pushing 30 stolen base speed if he were to be an everyday player. And he is not quite an everyday guy, but he's got the strong side of a platoon at the minute while the Tigers are pretty banged up. He did actually sit today against a righty, but that's because he had started 6 games in a row, most likely. And he even batted leadoff, I believe, in 3 of those. So if he's going to occupy a key spot in the order and start against basically every right-hander while giving you that triple eligibility, then Zach McKinstry is a player you should have as your 30th man, I think, in a lot of leagues. I wouldn't have him as anything more than that, but I think he belongs on a team. If you've got any needs in any of those 3 spots, he's fine. Zach McKinstry.
Yeah, Wilmer Flores used to be a guy who we could count on for that multiple position eligibility. That's not the case with him anymore. Only first base eligibility. But off to a great start at the plate. He was a disaster last year had knee problems, but he had surgery and now he looks healthy. 910 OPS, 4 home runs, 10 RBI in the first 7 games. Look back to 2023. He had a really, really good season. 863 OPS, 23 home runs, and just 454 plate appearances. I mean, I think the playing time's going to be there. He's been a full-time DH so far. Gerard Encarnacion it's going to miss several more weeks with a fractured hand, I believe. And I know a lot of us were intrigued by Encarnacion as a late round pick, but it's not like he's going to be guaranteed a job when he comes back, especially if Wilmer Flores continues to hit. Very limited skill set. He's not going to steal any bases, not going to hit for a great average. Because he's so slow, he's probably not going to score a ton of runs either, but he's got some pop. He's playing every day. I think the Giants actually could have a pretty decent lineup. And Wilmer Flores in your deeper formats, I think, is worth a look.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. You mentioned Encarnacion. One of the reasons people were interested in him is that Flores was so bad last year that the job looked like it was wide open. if Flores looks good again, then I don't think Encarnacion has enough about him to say that he just gets the job handed to him in any way. So I think he really could just get Wilmer Flores if he plays well, just being the guy pretty much all year. My next deep league ad is Kyle Stowers, outfielder for the Marlins, who looks like he is got a firm grip on the large side of a platoon. Actually started once against a lefty as well. He's even been batting second against every right-hander, which is another point in his favor. Kyle Stowers, somebody who came over from the Orioles in the which Rogers? I'm about to say the wrong one. The Trevor Rogers trade last year. Gives you a sense for the fact that he's not a huge prospect, if that's the deal he's being included in. And, he's already 27, so not really a prospect anymore, but he was a pretty interesting power-based prospect with the Orioles. And in his major league career, 370 plate appearances, only 7 homers, but good hard hit numbers, 10% barrel rate, 50% hard hit rate, too many strikeouts. So there's a lot of players like this who might strike out too much that they'll never get to their power, or maybe they'll keep that strikeout rate just on the acceptable side of the line. And, so far, 30% strikeout rate, not great, but he was at 35 and 36% the last 2 years. So if there's progress here from Kyle Stowers, there's enough power to make some contact concerns work for him. There's just not enough power to make extreme contact concerns work. And I'd be willing to give a shot to Kyle Stowers, given the playing time. It seems like he might have a chance to have this be the year where he proves that actually he is a regular big league player. There is enough power here, and the contact concerns aren't that bad. I think this is worth a shot. I would bail pretty quickly, though, if that strikeout rate starts getting in the 37% range again.
Yeah, hard hit rate for Kyle Stowers so far, 71.4%.
Is that good?
He definitely hits the ball hard. It's a extreme small sample size for sure, but when he makes contact, he generally makes it pretty hard contact. My final deep league hitter recommendation, we got to throw Jake Mangum out there, right? With the start that he's been off to. He did not start yesterday's game, but he's pretty much been an everyday player since Josh Lowe went down. Batted no lower than 4th in 3 of the last 4 games before he had that day off on Friday. Got 8 hits and, most importantly, 3 stolen bases in his first 4 games. You look back at the minor league track record, good quality of contact, high contact rates. I'm not super excited about Jake Mangum. I'm not going to feign over excitement here, but he's getting regular run. He's batting in the middle of the lineup. That should be a very hitter-friendly home park that the Rays are playing in. Perhaps he's a bit of a late bloomer. As is the case with you and Stowers, if it turns sour quickly, I will be very quick to jettison him to the waiver wire. But while he's getting regular run and doing some hitting and some running, I think in deep leagues, Jake Mangum is worth a pickup.
All right. And my final guy for today's show is going to make at least one commenter happy. We've had a lot of calls for this guy, Kyron Paris. And, I really hesitated to put him on this list because I don't think he's playing enough to matter. I think it's more likely than not that you're going to pick up Kyron Paris this week and drop him next week after he gets maybe one start. He's only started 2 games this year, and it was when Joe Adell was hurt. But Kyron Paris keeps coming off the bench and doing things that matter. He's got a hit in 5 straight appearances. He's got 3 steals already this year. He's got a homer as well. So the reason I'm including him here is mostly for that speed and the fact that he's a young player who's showing something. I don't think he's actually usable yet, but I do think that you might be able to pick him up if you have space on your roster where you can afford to pick up somebody who doesn't need to go straight into the lineup. I think if a young player keeps performing well whenever he does get a chance, I think he's going to start getting more chances, and it looks like he can really run. The other problem here, in addition to the lack of playing time, is that I'm not really convinced that he's any good. He's just 23, and he's got plenty of time to get better. But if you look at his minor league numbers, good speed, bad contact, and not really any power. With a bad contact, you need to have more power for me to believe that this is going to work. He's not 0 power, but he topped out at 14 homers in a minor league season, and that's just not enough. So I'm saying a lot of negative things here, but I would still try to maybe squeak him in for $1 in a few places because, again, young player who keeps performing when he gets his chances, that usually leads to more chances in the future, and chances on an Angels team with a guy who can run, and we know how often the Angels like to run. The upside here, it's a very slim chance, but if Paris is to work his way into very regular playing time, we're talking a ton of steals, not just, 15 to 20. So worth a mention. I don't want to go very high for him at all. Again, I'd throw $1 on if I've got a very much an extra roster space, but couldn't go another week without mentioning him just in case.
Yeah, keep an eye on the injuries to Luis Rengifo and Yohan Moncada. That Moncada aggravated that thumb injury that almost led to an IL stint to begin the year. Rengifo strained a hamstring or tweaked a hamstring. Ron Washington said after the game that they were both precautionary removals, but these are both recurring injuries. Rengifo dealt with a hamstring issue during spring training as well. So would not be surprised if one or both of those guys wind up on the IL, and Kyron Paris can play the infield and the outfield. So he could find his way into the lineup if one or both of those guys wind up going on the IL.
Yeah, and I think as somebody who can play the middle infield and center field and can run but can't really hit, that looks like a bench player to me. But again, it's the Angels. There's going to be a lot of bench players who are playing more than bench players tend to. That is going to do it for today's show. Thank you to everybody who hung out in the chat and suggested some names. Hopefully we got to all your favorites. We'll be back next week with another set of recommendations here on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, brought to you by Vivid Seats.